I think Sexton is going to be a really good player for a long time in the league and has and will have like real value. Oddly, I do not hate it for Utah, though. I'm a huge Sexton fan, and if Sexton pops, you're going to be able to get something of more value, oddly, out of that too. I don't think that's going to turn into nothing. You know, that you either keep him, and he's on a great contract. I don't hate that contract at all. I think Sexton is going to be a really good player for a long time in the league and has and will have like real value. Hell, he might average 50 points a game next year if they run him out there with the rest of those bums. But you can move him for something of value. And you did get a lot of picks. Where are you at on the Kansas kid? Because no one has mentioned that as an asset acquired. And I find it interesting that maybe it was just the best Danny Ainge could do, or maybe Danny Ainge really wanted that guy. And there have been a lot of guys in that range that have popped a lot. We chronicle it every year. Guys that were drafted in the same range as that kid, who's awesome in college, absolutely awesome. Is it possible that that's a better asset than anybody's given it credit for?
I think Agbaji could be a better asset. I mean, the great part for him now in Utah is he's going to get a lot of opportunity. 22 years old, so he's a bit on the older end for a prospect coming out of Kansas. He played all 4 years there. It's not necessarily a bad thing. Like you saw with Desmond Bane, you experienced that in Memphis, Chris. An older prospect comes in.
Brandon Clark, too.
Right? Doesn't necessarily mean a late bloomer can't continue ascending. Everybody's on a different path with their own personal development, and true for players as well. We've seen it time and time again in every sport, in every league. It doesn't matter, right? So with Agbaji, I think that is definitely the underrated asset here. Isn't it? Doesn't it feel like, it's like when a car leaves the lot, suddenly instead of like a first-round draft pick, it becomes Ochai Agbaji, right? Like the name just loses its luster, even though he's still an impressive young prospect worthy of being drafted in the lottery. So, the thing with him is just from a draft point of view, how real is his jump shot? He improved as a shooter as a senior, did not shoot nearly as well prior to that. And he was still streaky throughout the college year for Kansas as well. So that's the big question with him, with how great he'll be as a rookie. But yeah, I like this deal for Utah. They have 12 future first-round draft picks now. They're set up to tank in a year that has Victor Wembanyama, French prospect we've talked about a bunch, same agent as Rudy Gobert. There's some familiarity there. Perhaps there could even be interest in him landing there. So I think for the Utah Jazz, they're set up for having the type of tank-tastic year that they need to have, while also developing young players with a first-year head coach. To me, if you're a Jazz fan, you're not rooting for a playoff team like you have been for many years now, but you're rooting for a young team. Lauri Markkanen, Walker Kessler, Agbaji, Collin Sexton coming back, Jared Vanderbilt, another name, Taylor Horton-Tucker. Like, there's so much young talent on this team, and some of them are inevitably going to pop as young players that you want to keep as keepers moving forward.
This is the Boston thing all over again, isn't it? This is Al Jefferson, Tony Allen, Delonte West. Just like stock up on a bunch of them, see what hits, and they will become assets for what I really want to do.
It feels like Danny Ainge is going down that path for sure. It's like a mixture of that, Boston, and also the blowing it up with trading Pierce and KG, that type of vibe too.
Yes.
12 first-round draft picks in the future, that's amazing. And that doesn't even factor in the swaps that they have either.
Right. So he's got all these assets. And I do feel like the Agbaji thing, I don't know. Maybe it's just because he went 14th in the draft. I kind of feel like if maybe some of the other names that were right behind him were in the trade, that people would feel differently about it. Mark Williams, AJ Griffin, Tari Eason. They'd be like, ooh, and they got him. But like, I didn't hear one person talk about Agbaji as like a real asset that they got back in this. It's just kind of like, oh yeah, and they got that draft pick from Kansas. Like, he was the 14th pick of the draft. He might be good. He might be great. We don't know. You know what I mean? We've seen a lot of guys in that range pop. I'm not saying he's going to be one of those guys, but it's worth mentioning that the aforementioned Donovan Mitchell and Paul George and Kawhi Leonard and the best player in the league, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Devin Booker, and on and on and on. Like, I don't know. Maybe it doesn't turn out to be anything. Or maybe he becomes a star and Danny Ainge like stole it out of this. Kawhi Leonard, another one. Like that you could go on and on. There's been a ton of those guys in that range that have really hit. And I just found it fascinating. I didn't hear one person talk about that like it mattered at all. Poor guy. Wasn't he college player of the year? I think he was. I think he was college basketball player of the year. And just nobody cared. They won the title.
He was Big 12 player of the year.
Oh, Big 12 player of the year? Who was college player of the year? It wasn't Paulo. Was it Keegan Murray? I don't even remember.
It was wasn't it Walker Kessler? Or was he just a finalist?
Hell no.
No, it was Johnny Davis. Johnny Davis was. Walker Kessler was a finalist, though, I believe, right? Or maybe he was a finalist for his conference, too.
He was a finalist for...
Walker Kessler was a...
He was a finalist for getting played off the court by Miami in the tournament. I know he was a finalist for that.